Welcome back to Wild Space, everybody. We have today a deck guide for you. Sly More with Aggression pairing. This is a deck I played at the Vancouver PQ this past weekend and managed to get into the top 8. If you are looking for a deck that has pretty good matchups into most of the meta decks, aside from Talzin, we'll talk about that, or something that's a little bit different, check this deck out. It could be the deck for you. We are going to talk over, matchups with kind of the top meta decks, break the deck down a little bit, and talk about some cards and lines of play, and then other cards that could be included. So, when I was thinking about the deck, I kind of was, I don't know, I didn't have a deck that I really liked for this meta. The pilot decks are fine. I do like spaceships, but they're a little, I don't know, a little linear. I wanted something that could just be a little more flexible in how it played in some of its matchups. So I thought about, what does my deck need to do if I'm going to build a deck for this meta? Well, I wanted it to be able to deal with 4 things. Credits. This is getting played in 3 of what I think are, I don't know, top 5, top 6, 7 decks. Lando, Chewie, and Beckett. Upgrades. And this includes like tall leaders. Some decks are just slamming attachments on leaders because leaders are really hard to kill right now and just hammering away. Or they're just putting a single Chewbacca on, or a single Vader, or a single constructed lightsaber on an early play and go to town that way. So this is decks like Luke, Boba, Talzin, and Obi. Hauler is very strong right now. Any of the yellow decks, it's probably getting played in. And then Aggressive Negotiations is also very popular and is ending a lot of games. So I wanted a deck that had answers for all of these. And as I was working my way through the card pool, I came to Red, Yellow, Villainy. So Skeen as a way to deal with credits, Constable and Arrest as a nice way to deal with the upgrades. You can play your own hauler to combat the other haulers, and then the Boba Pilot on your turn 1 play. If you play the shielded ship on turn 1 and then play this Boba Pilot, then you can run over their hauler if they played it on turn 2, which is really nice. It's like a free kill, free ship. And then Garandan is good for some hand control to take away that aggressive negotiations from them. So this was a package of cards that I was interested in. And then in Lawless Time, Skeen is from Lawless Time, obviously, but most of those other cards aren't. They also got just some fantastic cards. So Shadow Stygian Prime is great, granted. There are a lot of red decks out there playing Upgrade Hate, but in certain spots, it is a fantastic card. It's essentially, for the decks that can't deal with upgrades, it's a 4-cost, remove anything, and better than that, you're going to burn them over time. So, Interrogation Droid is great. Exhaust an enemy unit, period. Cost 2. Pretty good. You know, people pay 1 for Nimble Prowess, and you have to be in the same arena, and you have to attach it to a unit. This doesn't care about arenas. It only costs 2. And it has a bonus. If you exhaust something small, they discard a card, so it puts pressure on their hand. Also comes on a 3/1 body, which is nice and aggressive, since we are going to be kind of playing a little more aggressive of a deck. BT and 000 are, I think, 2 of the best statted units in the game. So BT's a 2/4 that is sometimes a 3/4. And if you skew your deck even more towards red than this one is, then he's almost always a 3/4. And then 000 is a 4/4 for 3, which is great. And if you happen to play a BT or some of your units have died throughout the game, then he's a 5/4 when he's going to base. And for 3 cost, you can't find that anywhere else. And then lastly, hold for questioning. Another exhaust an enemy unit, also hits leaders. You get to look at their hand and pick any card you want. Not any card you want, it has a shared aspect, but in a lot of situations, it's any card in their hand, and discard it. So, with this fantastic set of cards, and given that red-yellow villain had the tools to kind of deal with the decks in the meta, I decided that was where I was going to go. This is the list that I ultimately ended up on and played at the PQ. A couple of people asked why Sly. I think Sly, I did try pretty much all the red-yellow villain options. I started with Boba because Boba has topple and it's pretty broken when you get to do that. But Boba requires such a high quantity of ships in his deck in order to make his flip viable, that I didn't feel like I had enough card slots to get in all the other things I wanted to get in. I might revisit it and see. There's probably something there if you look at it a little longer. I tried the client, who was good as well. He really was good at suiting up a sudden ferocity and just hammering away at base. The one downside to him is that a lot of the good top decks right now are playing Commence the Festivities, which gives Saboteur. So then that shield on the client can become irrelevant and he can get taken out pretty easily. Greetings from the future. I wanted to let you know that there was a client list that got to the top 4 in the Stockport PQ. So if you want more yellow-red villain goodness, be sure to check that out. And now, back to our breakdown. I tried Rio for a while. I had this funky, like, half ground vehicle, half space vehicle deck where I was trying to just lane dodge whatever they were playing. I would play completely opposite them, and then Rio would go onto either a ground vehicle or a space vehicle, and he'd have saboteurs. So they couldn't put a sentinel in front of him, and then it was a little bit janky. It did pretty good though, but ultimately, if you didn't get the right vehicles for the matchup, then you could be in trouble. I tried Dedra, who was also very good. She was faster than Sly is, but a little too much of a glass cannon. Didn't have enough, counterplay to what the opponent was doing. So ultimately, I landed on Sly. The ping 2 damage on her unit side can go into space, which is really nice for fighting those space decks and just giving you that little edge. So kind of similar to how Luke is like a mid-rangey aggro deck with an aggro plan, and it has, some ways to interact on the ground and slow your opponent down. Sly's kind of doing the same thing. It's an aggro deck that has some interaction enough to slow your opponent down. Okay, so just looking over the list here, we've got 12 2-drops in BT, the Patroller, Serial Karn, and the Warrior Clan Ordo. Our Interrogation Droid and Outer Rim Constable are not really turn 1 plays. I guess if you mulligan into a second bad hand, then you can play them, but generally those are for later in the game, on turn 2 or 3, but not or 4, but not turn 1. The one thing that people asked when they saw this was why not 3 interrogation droids. Part of that reason is because it's not a turn 1 play. You do want to play it later, so by that time you can hopefully draw into it. It does only have 1 health, which can be a detriment into some decks, and I didn't want too many of those 1 health units. Boba, you need HP to soak, and there is Talzin out there. But yeah, you could go up to 3, I guess. Although I'm pretty happy with it at 2. The 3-drop slot is great. You got 000 and the Hunting Assassin Droid, both of who can hit for 5, and then you've got the Hauler, who is the best statted ship in the game. Skeen as well, not a 3-drop. You're going to play him later in the game. Although I guess against Chewbacca, you can play him on Chewie flip turn, which is turn 4. So yeah, not a 3-drop. You hold him for a turn. And then we've got our 4 cost units, which is kind of the odd cost out in this deck. There are times when you want to go for a 3 and Sly's ability to make a spy. But there's not a ton of good options at the 4 slot. So I went with these ones ultimately. Afra can give you an occasional card draw, +1 card that can make an aggressive negotiations better, but ultimately she's not great, but she does have 5 health, which helps against some of the Bobas, and even Chewie. The 4 health units can get pinged off pretty easily by Chewie. Elia Kane is sometimes answer to the plot cards. She can sometimes make sure that your opponent, if they're playing Boba or Luke or even Beckett for Sun and Frosty, can't do the thing they want to do. But even if she doesn't hit anything, she's a totally reasonable body. I think the 6 health is great against Boba. It's great against Zeb. He can come in and deal 5 to something, you won't even kill her. And then she has raid 1, so she can swing back into him. So really like her in that situation. And then Qui-Gon is just a Sentinel. There's a lot of aggressive negotiations decks out there, so sometimes you just want a Sentinel, and you don't get that in these colors, except for Qui-Gon, so he's there. The 5 cost units, I don't really play 5 cost units on 5 very often. Most of the time it's a 3 and a 2. They're just there if the game does go a little later, but most games are ending on Resource turn 5 or Resource turn 6. So they, if you're playing them on 6, you're not really getting a chance to swing. I guess the new Boba unit, if you play it on 6, he's doing 3 damage to something, which is nice. The other Boba unit, he has a shield if you put him to the ground, which can be nice if you just need something to survive to get one last aggressive negotiations off. Or most of the time he's used to pilot and go into the space decks. So if you do manage to put a Hauler out or Black Sun Patroller, then having him to kind of give some extra health, get some pings, and start fighting into space is really great. Then our event package, we've got 2 aggressive, 2 hold for questioning, 2 arrest, with an extra hold for questioning in the sideboard. Yeah, those, like we talked about, those cards, I mean, the arrest and the hold for questioning just do a lot into a lot of the good decks right now. And aggressive negotiations is aggressive negotiations. A lot of the times in this deck, you're not going to be hitting for very much, but sometimes 2 extra damage is enough, or sometimes you're playing against a deck that plays Chio, and then they're feeding you cards, and then it's great to have. And then the upgrades, the Sun Frosty is great. We ultimately kind of are an aggro deck. It's great to flip onto Sly, especially in some of the space matchups. Shadow Stygian Prime, you don't play it often because a lot of the decks are red, but when you do play it, it is very good. So I like having them in the main board, and then I can swap them out. Seeing the meta this weekend at the tournament I played in, like the top 8 was 3 Luke, Boba, Lake Country, a Lando, a Beckett. How many is that? 4, 5, 6. A Vader yellow. Is it Pilot Vader yellow? And myself. So, seeing how much space really is out there, I would probably put the Commandeers in this spot, and just have the Stygian Primes in the sideboard. But if Lando and Obi become more popular and more played, then you're going to want them in the main board. So, anyhow. And then, lastly, the Ascension Cable. So a lot of decks are playing Commence Festivities as a option to get through Saboteurs. You could also play the Charge with Treason, which is another red for BT, as a way to get through most of the Sentinels. Sorry, Commence Festivities gives Saboteur to get through Sentinels. You could also play Charge with Treason, maybe in this slot. The problem with Charge with Treason is that I generally don't want to be spending that many resources and not putting more stuff on the board. But yeah, I don't know. I like the Cable for a couple of other reasons too, especially over the Commence, because Sly or this deck isn't fast enough that one attack with Saboteur is going to win the game. So you want to get, kind of 2 attacks off. And then the 3 health just gives you a nice buffer to keep the Sly on the table longer, which means you get potentially more pings off with her ability, and can even out the board a little bit to give you the edge in the race in the end. And then the sideboard, it's a lot of kind of 3 of third cards for cards that I want in specific matchups. System Shock instead of a 3rd Constable, just because some of the blue decks play that the 2/1 Shielded Droid, and System Shock's really good against that. And then the Devastators, just in case the games get really grindy and go long. Those might even get cut. I didn't play a single game where playing a Devastator would even be an option. Like, we never got to 8 resource turn ever in any of the games. So yeah, I could see those being cut for something else, but who knows if the meta shifts. They're just a great finisher. I prefer that to Kersantin because it's 4 guaranteed damage, whereas Kersantin doesn't always have a target to ambush into. But yeah, I could see them getting cut from the sideboard. All right, let's talk about matchups. We're going to start with Lando. So some of the key cards here: Zero, Interrogation Droid, Hold for Questioning, and the Shadow Stygian Prime. Attacking his hand is really valuable because you want his hand to be as low as possible going into the flip turn so that he can't hold on to multiple threats. Then that way, when he flips and you play Hold for Questioning and tap him and take a card, hopefully he only has 1 big card to play that turn. Now, good Lando players are going to see this coming and they'll try to hold on to multiple, but the more you have attacked and pressured their hand early in the game, the harder this will be for them. If you don't have Hold for Questioning, the next best answer for the flip turn is Skeen, so that they can't play a bow. However, if they make the credit and you, I guess it's better. Yeah, I guess it's better to maybe not wait for the flip, because they can still play. That's hard. Now I'm rethinking. If they're counting on playing bow, it's better to play the Skeen after, because then you just wipe their turn out. But sometimes you're going to want initiative and you're going to want to play the Skeen first, and that can totally disrupt their turn as well. So that they have to take that turn off, make another credit, and then try and do it again next turn. So you're saving your Skeen for resource 5, resource 6 turn. Playing it after the flip, I guess, is risky if they have the 8 drops that they could play, like Liberty or Mandalorian. But if they're really sitting on Bo-Katan, then playing the Skeen after the flip is just devastating. Ascension Cable's good in this matchup. Protects Sly from getting hit by Qui-Gon if they decide to ramp into a Qui-Gon a little earlier, or the Mandalorian on the flip turn. Lando doesn't have a good way to deal with Hauler, so you can really get a lot of damage in with the Hauler throughout the course of the game. That helps you close it out later. And then Stygian Prime is just a card that they have no answer to. So even if they do play their giant big thing, you can respond. Like, let's say you don't have Hold for Questioning, you don't have a Skeen. The third card that you would want on the flip turn is a Stygian Prime. So whatever they play, you just lock it down immediately. It'll never untap, and it'll just drain them for 2 every turn. So I feel pretty good into Lando. There are ways they can beat you for sure if the Lando Sentinel is annoying. He's going to soak up a lot of damage. The Ascension Cable helps there, but unless you've pushed enough earlier that Sly herself is like threatening to finish the game, then he can really brick wall the rest of your team. But you have so many answers for the flip turn that it just sets them back further than they can. So in testing, Lando was a matchup I was happy to see. All right, next is Luke. Some of the key cards in this matchup: Arrest, Sudden Ferocity, and Elliot Kane. Arrest is good if they try to go for a Chewbacca play. It's also good to have if you want to go for a hauler, which we'll talk about in a minute. Sudden Ferocity is almost a must. These games against Luke are very, very close. You generally can let Luke hit you once, and then you need to close the game. So if you don't see a Sudden Ferocity, sometimes you can come up short with damage. So if they have a Cinta and you don't get a chance to exhaust Luke after he flips with a Interrogation Droid or Hold for Questioning, then that's when you're going to run into trouble. Now, thankfully, Elia gives you a shot at getting rid of Cinta, so it's good to see her too. But you do want to go wide in this matchup, so if you can, turn 2, it's better to go 2-drop plus Sly's ability to make a spy if you can. They can mess that up. Sometimes they will play Air Superiority on turn 2. And so sometimes it's better to hold your better 2-drop for the second turn and play the one that you're happier to have die on the first turn. Hauler can be really good in this matchup. Luke has the ping, but it's generally going to 2-for-1 anything they have, but it's going to die for sure, so I would not play it unless you have an arrest to get it back to your side. And then if you do, then it's going to like 4-for-1 them, and so even if they do get it eventually at that time after you've brought it back once, it's probably too late in the game, and you've been able to either slow him down enough or push enough damage to base that you're going to be too far ahead. And then, sometimes you have to make big sacrifices to get the initiative at a good time to either get a good Hold for Questioning off, or it's because the Sly flip comes before the Luke flip and you need those extra actions. You're almost never going to have it on the Luke flip turn, but you want to have it at least one other time in a game, and just to get that, tap one of his ships down, slow him down, that gets you ahead in the race. Denies one of his pings, and then it just is enough to kind of put you over the edge. So it is a race the whole way. You do often lose initiative because you have such a wide board, but if you can get it for that one key turn and lock down some damage, then it's good. Yeah, so Luke was a deck that I also feel pretty good into. I ended up losing to it in the top 8 to Tim. I had beaten him earlier in the Swiss, and we talked about the matchup, and he was like, "Yeah, I felt I felt pretty helpless in that matchup the first time. I got stomped, and the second time around, he played it a little bit better, and yeah, the games played out differently, so he managed to get him. So I think that's another thing that Sly allows in your matches, is that a lot of opponents are not going to know what to expect because it's not a deck they're going to see everywhere, and so that can give you some edges there. All right, Boba's similar to Luke, but there are some differences. So Hauler's good, Ellie's still good. Ascension Gun gives you enough health to get your Sly out of topple range, so he can't flip and topple you and kill Sly if she's holding an Ascension Gun. Constable, obviously, to strip Boba off after, get him his one hit, and then he'll be done. An Interrogation Droid, because, or Hold for Questioning, either of those, because most of the time they're going to want to topple, because we do generally have a little bit wider of a board, and so that means they're not going to swing, and then you can tap them down with one of your options there. Choosing who to sacrifice, Boba is really about how you distribute the damage, right? So know which units you're willing to let die, because units are going to die. They just have so much damage, and then either the IG or some of their other pings that they get to choose can clean things up. So just be aware that you want to put things. You want to run that balance of giving up units to keep your base healthy, versus not getting your board, completely decimated if he does get to topple. So the high health units really help with that. So like Elia with 6 health, yeah, she's there to kind of see if she can get rid of the topple, but even if she can't, it's hard to kill her with topple. So in this matchup, it's better to not make the spies, I find, and just play the higher health units. Or if you are making the spies, at some point just soak up the damage on them and let them die. And then watch out for IG-2000 collateral damage. If Boba gets a play where he can kill 2 or 3 units with one play, then that can sometimes swing the game into his favor. But other than this, Boba, I feel pretty good against Boba. As I'm talking about this, none of these matchups are like a slam dunk. Sly is never gonna just have free wins, which is, a little bit strange since I spent most of last set playing Han, which anytime you could go, or Han went green, you could go resupply in the first 2 turns. It was kind of a free win. So this time I'm playing the opposite. It's a little grindier deck. It doesn't have those free wins, but it feels pretty good into most of the meta decks. Chewie, the Interrogation Droid, and Skeen are priority here just for managing his flip turn. If he does get greedy and try to get the double Chewie ping on his flip, Skeen can just be a total blowout. Obviously, if you're playing red, good Chewie players are not going to do that. So having the Interrogation Droid or Hold for Questioning can help with that. I prefer the droid because it at least gets a body on the ground on turn 3, which you really want to be doing. But make sure to hold them for the flip turn, and then you can kind of mitigate that early pressure that he's getting that way. Units with odd HP are better than even HP because Chewbacca does a lot of pings in 2. The odd HP, doesn't. yeah, it just makes it awkward for them because they have to commit the ping of 2 into something with only 1 left at some point. So, Holler is very dangerous to play against Chewbacca because of all his ping damage that he can do. I generally don't play Holler in this matchup unless I have an arrest where I can arrest my own Holler back. And then in this deck, he is faster than you. You are the control. So if you can tap down his leader when he flips, that'll help. And then you can flip Sly next turn and hopefully clean up Chewie so that he only got to hit you once. And then from there, you can start racing. But he's going to be heavy in space. You'll be heavy on the ground. Hopefully Sly can chip away at those ships and make the difference. And then Beckett and the aggressive negotiations decks. Skiing against Beckett, very good. Hold for questioning and Qui-Gon against both Beckett and any of the other aggressive negotiation decks are great. Hold for questioning obviously can rip the aggressive negotiations out of their hand, and then Qui-Gon is just a sentinel to get in the way. Against Beckett specifically, you can, if the timing works out, like if you ran into, let's say he played the 2/4 Sentinel and you ran a unit into it, and on the flip turn, if you have initiative, if you flip Sly first, you can attack and ping off your own unit to make sure that he doesn't get a credit and a card for it. But just ultimately make sure you have a plan for the flip turn. Hold for questioning on Beckett is going to be fantastic. And in most games, that's going to be enough. If he gets a lot of credits and plays a big Chrysanthemum early, that can sometimes be a problem. Or if you go a little too wide and he Rhydoniums, that can also be a problem. But I guess, yeah, Beckett is not a problem himself. You just have so many ways to exhaust him and then take him out. The other thing that can be a problem is haulers. So against Beckett, do not replay hauler. If you do manage to kill it, just let it stay dead. Don't play your own haulers. He is too good at getting control of them. So other card options. Before I talk about that, I'll just briefly mention a couple other deck matchups. Talzin is a beating. Like that's the deck you want to dodge. If you get paired into Talzin, you're gonna lose. But I mean, that's just the way it is. You're gonna have a bad matchup. That's with any deck, and that's the one you really don't want to see. Against all the other ground decks, it can be tricky, but just try and get the most out of Sly's ping and keep chipping away 2 damage, and eventually, most of the time, you can get there. So some cards that didn't make it into the final list, but I wanted to talk about. Hana is so good. At one point, I was playing Splash Base just to play Hana, and she is a champion in every matchup. However, in the matchups where you don't draw her, your base just becomes a giant detriment. So ultimately, I decided she wasn't worth the risk. I mean, the other reason to play her is because she's such a good 4-drop, and your 4-drops are generally the weakest part of your deck. So you can try Splash Base. If you can draw Hana like a champ, then you're going to do fine. The other 4-drop that is worth looking at is the Cutthroat Pod Racer. It just gives you a little bit better play into some of those other ground decks. I ultimately cut it because I felt like there was going to be enough ground decks at the top tables. But if they are more popular in your area, you could definitely slot that in instead of probably Afra is like the least performing 4-drop. Or you could run Charge with Treason. You might have to tweak the numbers a little bit to get to enough red that you feel comfortable playing it. But, deal 5 is good. It can kill space and kill ground. Yeah, no complaints there. The hounds were something that I had in the deck at one point, and ultimately I ended up cutting them because on my Sly flip turn, I was almost never playing a 5-drop. I was playing Sun Frosty, hopefully, at a 2-drop, or Hold for Questioning and a 2-drop. And then on turn 6, your opponent is going to have initiative, and most of the time we're flipping into Cinta, and then all of a sudden my hounds aren't ready. And if I spend 5 damage killing Cinta, then what's the point of playing the hounds? So that's ultimately why they got cut, but I could definitely see them, potentially having a place. Garandon's a card we talked about earlier, is a good hand control card, and I ultimately cut him from the deck just because even though it's quite powerful to go Hold for Questioning into flip plot Garandan on the Sly turn, the 1/3 body combined with the Hold for Questioning not developing a body meant that I wasn't putting enough damage on the board to close the game out in time a lot of times, and then I was losing the race. So I could definitely see, Garandan being in decks. I think he's very good. That was why he came out eventually. And then the last ship is the Volscaris Defender. If you want a little more presence in space, this could be an option. It is amazing if you start with BT. If you don't start with BT, though, it can be pretty bad because they're going to play a 3/2 on turn 1. Unless you have the 2/2 shielded as your turn 1 play into this, so that you can clear out their turn 1 play, and then this is kind of protected. It's not great. However, there's a lot of 3/4s that get played on turn 2 as well, so it's not the greatest option. If you could guarantee that it would always have the shield, then I would play it for sure, but without the shield, it's just a little too risky in my mind. So that is the deck, and yeah, hopefully this inspired you to give it a try, or try to build something new that plays well into these meta decks. If you have any questions, any things you would like to see, please leave them in the comments. Oh yeah, the matchups at the event, I played a Boba, a Luke, a Chewie, and one rogue deck, a new Leia leader, with a splash base, which was like flipping into making her a 5/5 or 6/6. And it was pretty good. We had three close games that ultimately got the win. But yeah, I went 4-0 draw, and then lost in top 8. So that was my run. And yeah, we'll see you next time.